The Galactic Zoological Society had the most comprehensive collection of dangerous fauna in known space. It had taken 200 years to build, 47 dedicated collection teams, the resources of 31 member civilizations. The result was a facility that drew visitors from across the galaxy. Researchers, students, curious civilians, the occasional military assessor who wanted to understand what the galaxy's most dangerous non-sapient life looked like up close in a controlled environment. The facility had one rule that every visitor was given before entering: do not approach the barriers of any Class 7 or above exhibit without escort. The rule was considered essential. Class 7 and above housed the animals that had been collected from worlds where survival required being the most dangerous thing present. Even behind containment barriers, proximity to these animals produced stress responses in most species that the facility's staff had learned to take seriously. The rule had been followed, without exception, for 200 years. Then the human school group arrived. Facility Director Sovan had been running the zoo for 14 years. She had approved the human school visit without particular concern. Earth was a member civilization. Its educational institutions regularly organized off-world cultural experiences. A galactic zoological facility was a reasonable destination. She had sent the standard visitor information, including the rules, and had received a confirmation that the rules had been understood. She had not thought carefully enough about what understood meant. The group arrived on a Tuesday. 31 students aged 12 to 15, 3 adult supervisors, and an energy that Sovan's front desk staff later described as organized chaos moving in one direction. They were enthusiastic. They asked good questions. They showed genuine interest in the facility's mission and the conservation work the society conducted. Then they reached the Class 7 wing. The Class 7 wing housed Earth's animals. This had seemed, when the collection was assembled 60 years ago, like a straightforward decision. Earth was classified as a deathworld. Its fauna were legitimately dangerous by galactic standards, and dangerous fauna was what the Class 7 wing was for. Several Earth species had been acquired through standard zoological exchange agreements. They were housed with appropriate care and represented a significant draw for visitors who wanted to understand what deathworld biology actually looked like. Sovan had walked Class 7 with visitors before. The standard response was cautious fascination. Species with strong predator recognition responses sometimes needed to be escorted past certain exhibits by staff because the animals triggered ancient evolutionary warnings that could not be consciously overridden. The human students walked into the Class 7 wing. The first exhibit was a large male lion. The lion was doing what lions in facilities generally did during morning hours and resting in a patch of artificial sunlight, breathing slowly, entirely untroubled by visitors. It was an impressive animal. Most visitors stopped at this exhibit for several minutes, processing the combination of size and latent capability that the animal projected even in repose. One of the students pressed forward to the barrier. "Oh," she said, "they have Simba?" Sovan's escort guide asked carefully. "Like a lion," the student said. "We have one of those back home. My uncle runs a sanctuary. His name is actually Chester, but we call him Simba when he's being dramatic." She was looking at the lion with the warm recognition of someone who had encountered this species before and found it agreeable. "Chester is bigger. He had a hard kittenhood." The guide looked at the lion, an adult male, 460 kilograms, capable of generating bite force that the facility's exhibit materials described as sufficient to crush bone without effort. And then at the student, who was pressed cheerfully against the barrier, with the expression of someone looking at something they found pleasant rather than alarming. "Your family keeps one of these," the guide said. "Chester's. Not a pet," the student said, slightly reproving. "He's a rescue. My uncle rehabilitates them. Chester can't be released because he imprinted on humans when he was young. So he thinks we're lions too. It's complicated." She paused. "He's very affectionate. You have to watch your ribs when he leans on you." The second exhibit was a saltwater crocodile. The facility's materials described it as one of Earth's most ancient predator lineages, with a bite force exceeding any currently living terrestrial animal, ambush hunting behavior, and a recorded history of prey items, including most of the large mammals that shared its Habitat, one of the older students, a boy, who had been taking careful notes throughout the tour, stopped at this exhibit and frowned slightly. "Is that a salty?" he asked. "A saltwater crocodile, yes," the guide confirmed. "Huh." He studied it. "We have a few of those in the river near my grandmother's village. You have to be careful around the big ones in nesting season, but otherwise they mostly leave you alone if you're sensible about it." He paused. "This one looks healthy. What do you feed it?" "We use a carefully calibrated nutrition program." "Does it get live prey?" "They do better with live prey for enrichment. The ones in the river." He caught the expression on the guide's face and stopped. "Sorry, is that not relevant?" The guide made a note in her incident log. She had been making notes since the lion exhibit. The notes were becoming extensive. The third exhibit, the one that Sovan, reviewing the footage afterward, would return to most frequently, was the one housing a pack of spotted hyenas. The hyenas were active when the school group arrived. This was not unusual. Hyenas were energetic animals with complex social behaviors, and active exhibits drew more visitor engagement. What was unusual was the response the hyenas had to the students. The pack, 7 animals, with an established hierarchy that the facility's staff knew well, approached the barrier in the way they generally approached visitors. With the assessing attention of animals that were curious about new stimuli, the students approached the barrier with identical energy. What followed was several minutes of what Sovan's staff would later struggle to describe accurately in their incident reports. The students were making sounds, not words, a specific category of sounds that several of the human adults in the group were clearly familiar with because they were smiling, and the hyenas were responding. Not with alarm, not with the predatory assessment that the facility's behavioral notes described as their standard response to unfamiliar stimuli. With what the facility's senior animal behaviorist, reviewing the footage 3 times, could only describe as engagement. "What are they doing?" Sovan asked her escort guide, watching on the facility's monitoring system. "I believe," the guide said carefully, "that the students are communicating with the hyenas." Communicating. The sounds they are making are producing consistent responses from the animals. The animals are not in distress. They are, the guide paused. They appear to be interested in the students. In the students. Sovan looked at the footage. At 31 human children pressed against a hyena exhibit barrier, making sounds, and 7 hyenas, responding with what her behavioral expert's facial expression suggested was something she did not have an existing framework for. She called the senior behaviorist. "Directly, what am I looking at?" she asked. There was a long pause. "I think," Dr. Tavin said slowly, "that some of the students may have prior experience with this species." "Prior experience," Sovan said. "There is one student in particular, the tall one at the left, barrier, whose vocalizations the alpha female is responding to specifically and consistently. The alpha is not displaying stress signals. She is displaying what in our behavioral framework we would call positive social engagement. But I am having difficulty applying that framework here because that response is typically reserved for..." Dr. Tavin paused again. "It is typically reserved for members of the pack." The teacher who was supervising the group was a woman named Dr. Amara Chen, who had been teaching secondary school biology for 22 years, and who took her students on off-world educational experiences because she believed, firmly, that understanding the galaxy required encountering it directly. Sovan found her at the hyena exhibit, watching her students with the fond attention of someone whose charges were doing exactly what she had hoped they would do. "Dr. Chen," Sovan said, "I need to ask you some questions." "Of course," Chen said pleasantly. "Your students." "The interactions they are having with the exhibits. Several of them appear to have prior direct experience with Earth's, with the animals in our Class 7 collection." "Oh yes," Chen said. "I try to select students for these trips who have some baseline familiarity with natural systems. It makes for better observers." She paused. "Is there a problem?" "The student at the hyena exhibit," Sovan said. "The alpha female is responding to him as a social familiar." "That would be Kofi," Chen said. "His family has a wildlife research station. He has grown up around spotted hyenas since he was small. They do know him. Not this specific individual, obviously, but the species recognizes certain things about him, that it associates with safe social contact. He is very good with them, she smiled. He wants to be a field researcher. I think he will be excellent. Sovan looked at Kofi, 14 years old, pressed against the barrier of what the facility's materials described as one of Earth's most dangerous social predators, making sounds that the alpha female was responding to with what Dr. Tavin had identified as positive social engagement. Dr. Chen, Sovan said, how many of your students have this kind of familiarity with the species in our collection? Chen thought about it. Most of them have some direct experience with Earth's wildlife. It varies. Amara, the girl at the lion exhibit, her family runs a big cat sanctuary, as she mentioned. Kofi with the hyenas. Remy grew up near a wolf reintroduction program and has done field work. James has a family farm and has dealt with wild boar incursions since he was young. She paused. Selin's grandmother is a traditional healer who works with venomous species. She would be useful in your reptile house if you have the appropriate... Please, Sovan said, with the particular precision of someone reaching the limit of their framework very quickly. Stop. Chen stopped. Sovan looked at the exhibit. Add Kofi and the hyena, at the lion lying in artificial sunlight, while Amara described her uncle's sanctuary to a guide who had lost the ability to respond in complete sentences. Dr. Chen, she said, for your students. Earth's Class 7 fauna. How do they experience them? As threats? As subjects of scientific interest? Chen considered this genuinely. As neighbors mostly, she said. Things that share the planet with us. Some of them are dangerous and you treat them with appropriate respect. Some of them you develop relationships with over time. Some of them you study. Some of them you eat. She paused. It depends on the species and the context. You eat some of them. We eat quite a few of them, yes, Chen said. Though obviously not the ones in your facility. That would be inappropriate. Sovan was quiet for a moment. The crocodile exhibit, she said. Yes, one of your students mentioned that they have them, that they occur near his grandmother's village, that he is sensible about it during nesting season. Oh, that would be Demi, Chen said. His grandmother has actually named several of the large ones that use the same section of river regularly. She can tell them apart by their behavior patterns. She says the big male, she calls him Old Man, has been using the same hunting spot for 40 years. She paused, noticing Sovan's expression. Is that surprising? Your student's grandmother, Sovan said carefully, has named a large saltwater crocodile. Several of them, Chen said. She finds it useful for tracking territorial patterns. The incident report that Sovan filed after the visit was the longest she had produced in 14 years. It ran to 63 pages, which was unusual for what was technically a visitor management document. The conclusion was 3 paragraphs. The human school group completed their visit without any safety incidents, barrier violations, or animal welfare concerns. From a facility management perspective, the visit was unremarkable. From a species assessment perspective, the visit produced observations that this director does not have adequate existing framework to process. 31 students aged 12 to 15 demonstrated consistent prior familiarity with multiple Class 7 species. Not academic familiarity, but the direct experiential familiarity that produces specific behavioral recognition responses in the animals themselves. Several students demonstrated what our senior behaviorist has characterized as functional social communication, with species that the facility's behavioral protocols classify as non-communicative with non-conspecifics. This facility houses Earth's apex predators as exhibit animals because they represent the dangerous end of the deathworld's biological spectrum. The human students who visited today grew up alongside these animals. They find them familiar. They have named individual crocodiles. They describe lions as having difficult kittenhoods. They make sounds that spotted hyena alpha females respond to with positive social engagement. I am recommending that the facility's educational materials regarding Earth's fauna be reviewed and updated to reflect this context, because the current materials describe these animals in terms that their own species' children would find, at minimum, incomplete. I am also recommending that future human visitor groups be specifically briefed that our Class 7 protocols exist for the benefit of other species visitors, not for them, since they appear to have a relationship with these animals that our protocols did not anticipate and cannot fully account for. Earth is classified as a death world. Its fauna are dangerous by galactic standards. I understand this classification better now than I did before the visit. I also understand in a way that the classification does not capture, that the humans who live on this death world do not experience it the way the classification implies. They experience it as home. The distinction is significant. I am not sure our frameworks have fully accounted for it.